Great. All right. Good afternoon, folks. I'm Ted Futris. I am a faculty member in the Department of Human Development and Family Science. And if you're here to learn a little bit more about the Double Dog Pathway Program, then you are in the right place. And so we welcome you. And I know we've got some students, some faculty here as well. So I'm going to ask just to give us a sense of who's here and who's who, to update your screen name. So you can do this by clicking the little, when you hover your mouse over your face or your video, you will see 3 little dots and click on rename. And if you would, if you are faculty, please put your name and then what department you are in. If you are a student, please put your program or the program you're going to be in, and in parentheses, your anticipated graduation year. And while you do that, Katie's also going to share a quick little poll so we can get a sense of who all is in the room. All right. Great. I think that will, I think everybody has responded. So great. All right. And the poll. So just get a sense of who all is here. We've got a third year, we've got a second year, we've got two second years, 4 first years, and we've got a high school senior. Welcome and congratulations on your pending your acceptance into UGA. And so we've got some 3 HDFS majors, 4 psych majors, and 1 who's not yet enrolled. And so undetermined, we would love to have you join us here in HDFS. All right. So, and then also with me is Dr. Melissa Kozak, who also is one of our advisors, undergraduate coordinator actually for the department, and also know all and answers all for the pathways when it comes to courses. So you might get responses and communications from her. Thanks for joining us, Melissa. And as well as Katie Floyd, who is here with us, who you might have gotten emails from. She's our graduate administrative assistant who really helps hold all things together for us. She's our glue, so keeps things together. So thank you all for your help. And I know we've got a couple other faculty. Matt Jordan, welcome from Psych. Thank you for joining us. And I know Dr. Asaf Oshri is here. He's our graduate coordinator. So thanks, Asaf, for joining us. All right, so let's kind of dive into this and give you overview here's an overview of what we'll be covering. So we're going to spend a little bit of time first talking about so why a master's in HDFS, right? So there are a variety of options for you to consider now that UGA has this Double Dog Pathways program. And so why HDFS? We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk a little bit about the timeline, what you should expect in terms of the sequence, and from between your 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year in the program. And then a lot of times questions come up as to the thesis versus non-thesis option, and what's the difference and which one should you choose, right? So you don't have to worry about that when you right now, but something for you to think about. We'll discuss that, and then we'll wrap up with kind of discussing things you should consider as you're preparing. So if you've got a couple years until you're ready to apply, what should you be considering right now as you're preparing for that application in the 3rd year? Okay. And so, if at any time you have questions, please feel free to use the chat. Put your questions in there, or you can use the select under reactions. You can select raise hand, and if I see your hand raised, I'll call on you. Okay. But rule is, if you ask a question, you have to share your camera so we can see you. Okay. All right. So HDFS, we've got several faculty in the department that study a variety of topics, a variety of issues, ranging, as we like to say, from womb to tomb, from infancy all the way to later life development. Studying children, studying adults, couples, families, you name it. And so I encourage you, if you have not had an opportunity, go to our website. The link website is there on your screen. Jot that down, or use your phones and take a snapshot so you can remember it if you need to. But check out the faculty and learn a little bit more about the work that they're doing to see whose work really kind of speaks to you and aligns with your interests. Okay, and that'll be important as you'll see later on in this presentation. Okay. So why? Let's start off with first, why? Why a master's in HDFS? Now, I want to clarify, our department does not have a terminal master's degree in the sense that we recruit students into just our master's program. We have a child life specialist degree, which is a master's degree, and we have our doctoral program. So while we do have a master's degree we offer, it's typically reserved for students that are applying to the Double Dawgs, or sometimes students who apply, get into our PhD program and decide, kind of have a change in course in what they want to do. So they complete they complete all the requirements to meet to earn their master's degree. But we typically do not recruit students into a terminal master's degree. Okay, so this is really specific and special to the Double Dawgs pathway. It's an opportunity for our UGA students that are getting their bachelor's to then complete their master's in that 5th year. And HDFS is one of many options in terms of the Double Dawg pathway. So when you're thinking about why to get the master's degree, I want to encourage you to think about what are your career goals, okay? And so what I'd like to ask is, if you don't mind, use the chat and just put in, like, what are your career goals? Like, what do you want to, like, that question that your parents ask, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? What are you going to do to make money, okay? So use the chat and just kind of like, where are you right now? And maybe you're still undecided, trying to figure out. But use the chat and put in there what it is your career goal is after you graduate. Like, where do you want to be? I'm comfortable with silence. We got a school counselor. All right, Alyssa. Marriage and family counselor. All right. Aaron. Therapist for young adults. No clue, and that's all right, Sydney. Leaning towards child life right now. Okay. Excellent. All right. So I think, before you make that decision to pursue that Double Dawg pathway, it's really important that you first know what you want to do when you finish, okay? Because you have to decide, is a master's degree required for it? Do you need that extra year of school, of cost, of time to pursue what you want, right? Then you need to decide, what degree does that career choice require? So I see there, that Aaron, you want to be a marriage and family counselor, right? So you have to decide, like, what sort of specialization is that? Do you want to be a marriage? You want to be a marriage and family therapist, or do you want to? Or there's also counseling programs that could prepare you to do counseling. So there's different types of counseling and therapy programs. Okay. Now, usually, to become a licensed counselor, you do have to complete a full master's certification program. So the double dog pathway is likely not your best option because you won't get that certification and training. Usually that certification requires clinical hours, clocking certain amount of time, and you won't be able to do that in the double dog pathway. And so then you might want to just think about, okay, well, what programs out there offer that? And UGA has some great master's level programs like counseling programs. I know Psych has them, College of Education has them. That could be options. Now here we do have in HDFS a marriage and family therapy program, but it is a doctoral level program. It is not a terminal master's program. So just for those who are curious about that. But it's really important that you know what it is you want to do to determine what level of education and certification do you need to achieve that. Now, if your goal is to go on and get your PhD, right? Typically that involves a passion in doing research, a passion in teaching. So say you wanted to go into academia and you wanted to either teach, research, do both, or do outreach at a university setting. Now, you don't have to, with a PhD, you're not limited to just working at a university, but you have to really think about what career opportunities there are for you that require a PhD. And I'll tell you, in most PhD programs, they are research focused. So you have to know whether or not you really are invested and interested in research itself, okay? So if that's something you want to pursue, then getting your master's, especially in a pathway program like this, where you finish your bachelor's in 4 years and then 1 year you finish your master's, then that might be a quick, a helpful way to launch you into that PhD program that you want to apply to, right? And I'll talk a little bit later that if that's your choice, then you will want to choose the thesis option to prepare you for that, okay? Now, does your career choice require specialization certification by another MS program? So that's something you really need to think about. I've talked to some students who want to be social workers, all right? And so to be a social worker, you typically need a master's in social work, an MSW, okay? Now, it requires a lot more, and you'll notice that there's not a double dog pathway to get your MSW. So you actually have to apply to those programs, and those are typically at minimum 2-year programs, okay? So, so if that was your trajectory, HDFS masters, or really any other masters, won't qualify you to do that type of work, if that's what you want, right? So you really have to think about what is your end goal and what will this get you. Now, what can you do with the masters, right? I'm telling you what you can't do. So what can you do, okay? And, I'll tell you, like, one option, I work for Extension. I do a lot of outreach. I work with our county Extension agents across the state. Show of hands, put your hands up, raise your hand if you are familiar with Extension, like cooperative extension, whether it be here in Georgia or if you're from another state. So use the little reaction to put your hand up. And I don't see any hands or thumbs up, okay? Let me ask you this. Put your thumbs up or hands up if you are familiar or heard of 4-H. See a lot more hands popping up, 4-H. 4-H is actually one component of extension. All land-grant universities, every state has a land-grant university. And that at least one land-grant university, usually two, and that land-grant university has kind of a 3-part mission of fulfilling the university's 3-part mission of research, teaching, and outreach. And within extension, there's the ag side, there's the agricultural side, there's 4-H, so they work with youth, and then there's typically family consumer sciences. So, and almost every state now, including Georgia, typically now requires that a county extension agent have a master's degree. So if you are interested in, say, working with your community to provide nutrition education or financial education or do family life programming, right? Then then a family consumer science extension agent does that in most counties where they have one. And so a master's would really help propel you to that. So if you're looking to go back, so I encourage you, like this summer, check out where's your extension office in your county. What services do they offer? Who's there? Maybe talk to the 4-H agent if you want to work with youth. I see one wanted to be a therapist for young adults. If you want to work with young people, that could be a career trajectory or path. But there's also other options with masters where, working with nonprofit organizations, working with community-based groups to do outreach programming. A lot of folks go into that, working in childcare and school settings as well. Okay. But, Melissa, what would be, like, off the top of your head, some of the other career options that many of our students kind of pursue after they graduate?
Yeah, so I think one of the resources that I'm going to share in the chat is our career outcome survey. It is a little bit more undergraduate focused, but I think it can give you a good idea for where students are going and the types of opportunities they're pursuing. I think we see a pretty big variety. I think, individuals interested in adoption and foster care, whether that's with a private agency or an organization like DFACS. We do have some who have been inspired to develop their own businesses in relationship education, as an example.
Right.
So I think we also have a relating to youth development, students who are interested in camp organizations and other aspects of youth development in that sense. And I think the other big sort of place our students tend to go are like nonprofit organizations. And that looks different for each student in relation to the type of population that they want to work with or the things that they want to do. But those are some general ideas, but I'll pop some of that information in the chat, including the fax extension link.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. Yeah. And a lot of times, like even here at the university, many faculty who have grants like myself hire staff, project managers and coordinators. Typically, we're looking for master's level folks. So that could be, so if that's something that you want to pursue or interested in pursuing. All right. So what does the timeline look like? So I'm gonna kind of breeze through this a little bit because for many of you, it's still some time away from, there's still some time out till you get to this. But just to give you a sense of the timing so you can prepare and give some thought to it, this is like, the goal is for you to complete both your bachelor's and your master's in a 5-year period. That's the goal, right? And so around in your 3rd year, in that October, you would officially be applying to the Pathways program, okay? So that's when you would apply and you'd be admitted to begin the pathway in the spring semester of your 3rd year. Then your 4th year, that you would then be applying to the graduate program, right? So even though you are admitted into the pathway, isn't a guarantee that you're admitted into the master's graduate program. So you still have to apply to the graduate program officially to be admitted into the master's program. So you do that the end of your fall semester. So our graduation applications are typically due around the 1st of December. And so the spring year which is your 4th year, you're graduating, you're getting your bachelor's, you're walking, you're celebrating with all your friends, your family, all right? So you graduate, get that bachelor's, and then you're moving on, coming back, that 5th year to finish your master's. So then you would, and there's some things to do though before you head off and celebrate. And there's probably going to be some work in the summer for you to do to really finish on time in that 5th year. So when you come, because you'll have to not just graduate, but you have to formalize a committee, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Think about your proposal that you're going to do for your thesis or non-thesis project. And then the goal is that by the end of your 5th year, that spring, that following year, you're now graduating with your master's degree. Okay. So our goal is to really get you in, get you moving through so that in that by the end of that 5th year, you're done. Okay, with everything. So what does that look like year by year? So that fall of your 3rd year, you would be you'd apply to the pathway program and get accepted in November, and we'll have like an orientation where you'll get to meet the others who are accepted, and you'll also get an opportunity to meet your initial advisor. So when we accept students into the pathway in our program, it's also contingent on a fit with the faculty's interest, and so, or that there's a faculty member who is available to mentor you. So if you were to come in and say you really wanted to work with at-risk youth, right, then that we have a few faculty who specialize in that area that could then mentor you, right? And so what we always try to do is match students with a faculty who can mentor them. So you'd be paired with that person, and that person would kind of advise you and work with you and talk with you just to get to know you and help you along your next few steps, okay? And that's when you would start applying for graduate level courses for that following semester, okay? Now, I strongly recommend that you not take graduate level courses before you're admitted into the pathway, because they may not count towards your pathway. So just be very careful about what you take beforehand, okay? Now in the spring and fall, so your first full year in the pathway, you would register for some course credit hours where you're working with your faculty advisor, your mentor, you're meeting other faculty, you're starting to think about who's your advisory group that's going to help mentor the work you're going to do. And you're trying to decide between doing a thesis and a non-thesis, and I'll talk about the distinction between that later. And also really thinking about, if you haven't explored, and I'll talk more about this later, a Curio assistantship, the Center for Undergraduate Research Opportunity, something I'll share a little bit more about later and tell you more about that. And then in the fall of your 4th year, you're applying to the graduate program. Now here I do want to emphasize, again, just your acceptance into the pathway is not a guarantee of your acceptance into the master's program. Your acceptance into your master's program is contingent on you making satisfactory progress in your undergraduate courses. It's the quality of your application, because you have to submit a letter of statement of interest, letters of recommendation, right? So you can't just write it all off and assume it's an automatic, okay? And you'll still participate in the interview process just like every other graduate student that's applied to our program as well. So then your spring of your 4th year, right before you graduate in May, you'll participate in the graduate interview process. You'll hopefully get accepted into the graduate program, and then you'll confirm who your major professor is, who your advisory committee is. You'll prepare what's called a preliminary program of study, which basically is a summary of the courses that you would need to take in order to meet the graduate requirements for the master's. And you really start formalizing what you're going to do for your thesis. So that way, over the summer, you can start doing some of that work. So that when you come back in the fall, you can hit the ground running in terms of proposing that thesis, submitting the final program of study, and usually around December, no later than mid or late January, you then officially apply to graduate with your master's. And then your last semester, that spring of the 5th year, you would defend your thesis, non-thesis project, complete all the requirements from the grad school, and then graduate. So I just want to emphasize that, like, when it comes to getting your master's, it is more than just taking extra classes. I think some students have this misperception that, oh, it's just one extra year of classes, and it's more than just classes. All right, so there is a thesis or non-thesis requirement. Now, which one you choose is really up to you, and it's up to and you want to discuss this with your major professor, your initial advisor, who hopefully will become your major professor. So if, why do a thesis? Now, you would do a thesis if you knew that your career goal required going on and getting a PhD. If you're going to go on and apply to a PhD program, you'll want to do a research thesis, right? Because I'll tell you, like all our doctoral students, all our PhD students admitted into our program, if they come from a master's program where they did not do a research thesis, they have to do what we call a second-year research project before they can continue on, to demonstrate that they are able to do research, okay? And so that's really important. And it'll help you also be more competitive when you're applying to a PhD program, for those faculty at that program to be able to see that you understand how to do research, okay? And so that's really kind of the aim of the thesis, is to be more research oriented. And what does a thesis look like? It's not a big old book, right? Most theses at the master's level are research papers. So think of taking it's about a 25, 30-page paper that you write, where you're summarizing literature, summarizing the research you did, your findings, sharing, basically summarizing what you found. And then, so it's structured in about a 25, 30-page paper, okay? The hope is that that's something you might be able to publish as well, and which is great for you if you're going to go on to a PhD program, okay? Now, a non-thesis option might be if you're less interested in data, less interested in doing research, and want to do something more hands-on, applied oriented. And there's a lot of variability in what your non-thesis project could look like. It could be a comprehensive literature review paper. It might be developing an outreach publication. One of my double dogs, for example, helped to develop a little outreach publication to help schools understand what relationship education is and why it's important for young people. And so it turned into, we got a graphic designer after she finished it and graduated, and we got it all laid out. And now we share it with schools. It can be an outreach publication. It could be a program that you maybe developed. I know Dr. Kozak teaches, of course, family life education methodology, and they always, they come up with lessons and programs, and maybe you want to take what you developed in that class and then pilot it, test it, and see how it goes. And that could be your project. So there's a lot of variability that for that non-thesis option, and something you would just work out and discuss with your major professor. All right. Then things you should consider as you're preparing. So one, consult with your academic advisor about the courses you need and your prerequisites to see if you're on track, and to talk about your career goals, right? So you can contact us, but unless we know what your goals are, it's really hard for us to determine, like, is this the right path for you? Should you be choosing a different double dog pathway? There are alternatives, right? I'm not trying to encourage you to go elsewhere, but you really want to choose the path that's best for you, right? For your career goals. So your academic advisor is going to be the one person who can help advise you the best on that. If you know that you're going to want to apply here, start connecting with HDFS faculty as soon as you can. Don't wait till you apply your third year. It's always helpful to start connecting with the faculty, getting involved in their work. I'll give you an example. We have a wonderful psych student who her freshman year started working with our team in our lab, and she's just volunteering a few hours every week, and she's amazing. And so she's gonna stay on and keep working with us. And she's just seeing how research works, how outreach works. So there are opportunities that faculty have to include undergraduate students in their research. Now, it's not a guarantee. They often have limited spaces, but there are a variety of opportunities, not just in HDFS, but I know that there are a lot of labs and projects happening in psych as well. So there's a lot of opportunities in different departments across campus to get involved in. So whatever pathway you choose, don't wait till your third year to start engaging faculty. Start engaging them in your first year, your second year, right? Also, it helps for you to get involved in those type of projects and programs, because then you have faculty who can write really strong positive letters of recommendation for you. Because the other thing you want to remember is, you can apply to the pathway, get accepted into the pathway. And what I tell our pathway students is, when you apply to our graduate program to get your master's, at the same time, apply to other graduate programs, right? Because, sure, we want you to finish out and stay here. But let's say that you wanted to get that MSW. And so your 4th year, you apply to our program to finish out the pathway with your master's, but you also apply to a few MSW programs and you get in. Then you have choices. Do you stay to finish your master's here and then go to the MSW program, so defer for a year? Or do you just go, after you graduate your bachelor's, go straight to that MSW program and spend 2 years there to get that degree, right? So when you get into the Pathways program, you still have options. You always have choices. You always have options. And so your advisor should hopefully help mentor you in that direction as to what to do. But that's why you want to get involved with faculty's work on campus in your areas of interest, because then you have faculty who can write strong positive letters of recommendation. Can't tell you how hard it is to write a strong letter for a student that you only see in class. Because it's like, well, they showed up, they were there, I saw them, I graded their work, they did good, but that's not a strong letter, right? So the more you can get involved in, if you want to go on for your master's and or PhD, connect with faculty and start getting involved with their work. And that's where Curo can come in really handy. If you're not familiar with this, I encourage you go, Google it, Curo, C-U-R-O-U-G-A. Check out their website. It's the Center for Undergraduate Research Opportunity. And you can apply for funding. They offer assistantship stipends. I think it's about $1,000 for a semester if you're awarded. And what you do is you work with a faculty member. You've got to get their commitment to mentor you first. You can't just apply for Curo and then go to the faculty. So you have to work with faculty first and say, hey, could I work with you and could I apply for this assistantship opportunity? And then under that, work with you to be engaged in your research. And it's a great way to get involved if you want to do some research with faculty on campus or in our department as well. And that is one of the things I know we're going to be encouraging all of our pathway students who are working with our faculty, that during their 4th year to apply for a Curo assistantship. Why not? I mean, I doubt any, I don't know why anyone would want to turn away $1,000, to help cover bills or expenses, right? And you're already going to be engaged in doing that work anyway during that year. So something for you to think about and consider as well as you prepare. All right. So I've talked a lot. I'm going to kind of leave it open and see what questions y'all have. You can either unmute and share your camera so we can see you if you want to ask a question, or you can put the question in the chat. And I guess Melissa, Katie, was there anything that, or Matt as well, anything that y'all would add that maybe I didn't go over or didn't hit?
I was just going to say that Matt's here, and also Ahmad is here from HDFS for advisors, and they're good people to go to. But if you have questions for the advisors, this would be a great time to do that too.
Great.
The only thing that I would add, and it's just a point of clarification about research, and I'm saying this as someone that worked at Curo for a number of years previously, before leaving UGA and then coming back to UGA and working with psychology, is that within psychology, one of the things that we're now stressing, and this is just a reality that we're dealing with, is that the demand for research assistant positions, so basically an undergraduate working in a research lab, because of the size of our major, which now contends with biology to be the largest major at the university, we have more demand than we have seats available. So to Professor Futches's point about connecting early, that's essential. You really have to be working on that type of relationship, even if it's not going to yield an immediate position in a lab. It may be something that comes along in your second year or in the third year, but it only becomes a possibility in the third year because you have been invested. And also about the being in a research position where you're working, say, 9 hours, maybe even 12 hours a week. That's not always the only way. And I think one of the examples that was given about a psych student was that they were doing small, relatively small amounts of time each week early on, and then building on that over time. It's also that and I'm saying this specifically for the psych students, sometimes there's a misperception that the only research that is valuable is if you're a psych major is to do that research within the psych department. And that's simply not true. We have psych students that do research in biology, psych students, obviously from the earlier example, that do research in HDFS, and who certainly work in other social sciences, as well as some of the bench sciences as well.
Yeah, those are great points, Matt. And yeah, so this is where it really, it's on you to do your research on what faculty are doing across campus, not just in psych, but it could be in sociology, it could be in anthropology, it could be in religious studies, it could be in HDFS. I mean, we have so much research happening here on campus, and you have to think, what is your interest? So if you were to say, I'm really interested in how religion affects family dynamics, then see what faculty in religious studies are doing, or see if there's some other faculty in sociology that maybe are studying that, or anthropology. So it's really important that you kind of do some research and go stalk some faculty on their websites, right? And see what work they do, and maybe look at their articles and read their papers. I'll tell you, it always helps, like if you're going to reach out to somebody, don't just reach out and say, hey, Dr. Such and Such, could you tell me about your research? Because I'll tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to send you a link to my webpage and my articles and say, here you go, read up, right? So do your legwork and say, hey, Dr. Such and Such, I saw your webpage and I see you do this type of research. And I read one of your articles on such and such and it looked really interesting. Do you have some time? I'd really like to talk to you more about what you're doing and see if there's a way I can get involved, right?
And to that point, one of the things we used to stress in Curo, I'm sure they still do, is that the bar is not you perfectly comprehending the research article that you read and are reaching out about. There was often a misconception and an apprehension that resulted from that. Students thinking, well, if I don't understand this perfectly, and I can't go in and have this highly nuanced conversation with a faculty member, they're basically just going to, shun me from their door and tell me never to come back. And William Kieselita, who's actually over in the College of Engineering, actually had one of the best responses to that I ever heard. And it was, well, if you understand my research to that degree after reading it once, I probably should be meeting with you to see that, if I can recruit you into our PhD program and to work in my lab, and for you and I to become partners, moving forward. So, sometimes it's coming with questions about the article, even if they're very basic questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So just want to see how y'all are doing. If y'all have any questions about the program, about your career goals.
I was going to add, I currently teach our professional development course, and I think what has been particularly helpful for my students this semester, even when they thought they knew what they wanted to do, was utilizing their resources to learn more. So I think, we've given some examples of how to do that with research that's happening on campus. But if there is a faculty member who is teaching something that you think is really interesting, talk to them. What was their pathway to get there? What kinds of experiences did they have as an undergraduate, potentially as a graduate student, which would be the case if they're at UGA. But also identify professional organizations that are really critical for the department that you're looking at. That can be a great gateway into learning more about some of the certifications that are either required or offered, which is part of one of our Double Dog programs in relation to family life education. But I think understanding what that looks like at a professional organization level can be really helpful. And this may sound really silly, but stalk people on LinkedIn. That's what it's there for. So if you can find someone that is doing something that you think is your dream job, look at what their education looks like, look at what their experiences have been, send them a quick message on LinkedIn and say that you're interested in what they do and want to learn more. Generally, people really like to talk about themselves. So it's a pretty great way to just kind of figure out what people did, how they got there, what they do now, and whether or not you think that that's something that you're interested in doing as well.
Excellent. All right. All right, so we got a question. So if I wanted to get into the PhD marriage and family therapy program, would that allow me to be a therapist or counselor in the future? Good question. So yeah, so when it comes to marriage and family therapy, you want to first decide, are you primarily wanting to do the therapy, the counseling, or do you want to do the therapy and the counseling and the research? And so like our PhD program is really designed to, help you do both. But there are a lot of other master's level marriage and family therapy programs that where you get trained and you get the clinical hours needed to get licensed to become a counselor. So you really have to think, when you see that PhD, it's not always the case, but it's mostly the case that PhD involves research. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to do research on top of whatever else you're going to do? Okay. So yeah, so if you want to be a marriage and family therapist, there are a lot of great marriage and family therapy programs that are terminal masters.
And one of the things we talk about with students in psych is that there often, again, is the assumption that if I want to go into practice, and to follow the distinction that Ted just made, if you're talking about practice in terms of exclusively counseling, doing the work with patients, for lack of a better word, with clients sitting across from you, a lot of the psych students assume that they have to get a PhD. That's the only way that they can do that. When in reality, counseling master's programs, which were just referenced, could lead to LPC, a licensed professional counselor. You could also have the pursuit of a master's in social work leading to LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker. And then, of course, you do have the PhD programs that can lead to practice, a small p practice, that involves both therapy and research, or could lean much more heavily towards the research. So one thing is getting a more clarity about the various licensures and about the pathways to those careers and which licensures fit with what you want to do most appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? All right, folks. Again, if you afterwards you have questions, you're like, I wanted to ask, then you can email that to us. And actually, I did not put my email on the slide, so I'll put it in the chat. And then Katie, if you could put yours, and I guess everyone, if y'all put yours, and That way you can contact us if you have questions specifically to the Double Dogs, or, you know, again, when it comes to like trying to think about career choices, you know, your academic advisor is your best friend. Go to them. That's what they're there for, right? I mean, that's what they want to do. They want to help you figure out what do you want to do, and then are you taking the courses you need to get there, right? Don't wait till your fourth year to go meet them and say, did I do everything I'm supposed to do? You know, they don't like that. You know, it's not helpful.
Well, I don't mind it, but at that point, there's very little I could probably do for you. So
Yeah.
if you come to me earlier, we can have much more productive conversations.
Yeah.
The one resource that hasn't been mentioned yet, but I think is invaluable because it fits into this, is the connecting with mentors through the UGA mentor program. That's another very invaluable resource, and probably one that a lot of universities would be very happy to have, particularly their students would be happy to have. And UGA is very fortunate to have it. I think it's one of the real untapped gems at the university, is that mentor network, because you can really connect with people who are doing the things that you potentially want to do, and getting that insider's view, connecting with a person that's not only doing it, but is invested in mentoring the next generation, and particularly the next generation of UGA alum. That can be a very, very powerful resource for you to tap into and use over the next 2, 3, 4 years. I know there's an admitted high school senior here. So that's a program I would plug into early and often, as well as the Career Center.
That's great. Excellent. All right. Well, folks, I appreciate you all taking time to join us on a Friday afternoon. And I hope this was helpful. I hope we answered some of your questions. And hopefully we also made you think of new questions that you need to start thinking about. Yeah. Soth, did you want to share something?
No, just wanted to tell you thank you. It was very exciting, to hear about this Double Dog opportunity. And yeah, we're looking forward for to interacting with you. This is HDFS is really have great faculty with really state-of-the-art research. It can help you get to other programs. I know it can get a final degree here. So yeah, thank you very much for attending that, and thank you, Ted, Katie, and everyone for organizing that.
All right. Well, y'all have a great weekend. And again, don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions. All right. Take care.